Hi, everyone. I'm Chrissy Galley, U.S. Marketing Manager here at Kids and Company, and thanks so much for joining us today. I want to welcome our speaker today, Alana Patalo, founder of MetaSleep Consulting. Hello, and welcome back, Alana.
Hello, thank you.
MetaSleep helps families feel empowered and confident to implement gentle and supportive strategies on their journey to a well-rested household. And during today's talk, we're going to discuss the most common sleep issues babies and toddlers encounter and discover strategies we can implement to restore restful sleep to your household. Webinar participants, if you have any questions, want to share any stories or sleep scenarios with us throughout this session, please use the Q&A function at the top of your screen, and we'll do our best to address the questions during our live Q&A. So Alana, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and join us. So I can't wait to share all things sleep with you. And once the presentation is over, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. You can also put your questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation so that we can address any of those at the end. Okay, so yes, we are here today to chat about healthy sleep habits for babies and toddlers. And I'm hoping you really gain some insight on how you can maybe implement some of the things we talk about into your home. So you are in the right place if you are, tired of searching online for all of the things that can help your child sleep better. If you're dreading bedtime and, that time of day comes and you're like, oh my gosh, like what is sleep going to look like tonight? Who's going to be getting up with the baby? How many times am I going to have to get up? If you want to ensure your baby is getting enough sleep, we're going to talk about that too. And if you really just want to be the best version of yourself, and that means being well rested. So, you're in the right place. If those are some of the things you're looking for, I'm happy to help you out with those topics today. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Alana Metallo. I am the founder of MetaSleep Consulting. I am a mom of three. This is my lovely family here. I do have a background in early childhood education, as well as I have been a classroom teacher for 18, going on 19 years. I've been a sleep coach for the last 3 years of that journey. And I am here to help families empower and guide and support them on their journeys to a well-rested lifestyle. I got into sleep consulting because my oldest daughter was struggling with sleep. She was about 6 months old, and I was up every hour with her. And I couldn't take it anymore. I was not happy with myself. I was very anxious. I was very emotional at all times. And I finally said to my husband, I think we need to get her sleeping better so that I can, sleep better and be the best version of myself. And so it was then that we turned to hire a sleep consultant, and she changed our lives forever. We hired her again for our second. And then by the time our third came along, I was well equipped with all of the tips and tricks and strategies and my own sleep consulting certification that I was able to implement things into our home right from day one to get her sleeping well. So, I have some experience with me, and I can't wait to share that with you today. Quite often, we don't make sleep a priority. We're often interested in, healthy eating and exercising, but really sleep should be at the top of your, priority list because it is super beneficial to all aspects of our life. We really want to focus on getting uninterrupted sleep. Most of us, as parents, we have uninterrupted sleep overnight. If it's not one child that's awake, maybe it's another. Maybe you're waking up every 2 hours. This is not solidified sleep that is happening for us. And we often will spend a lot of our time in those light stages of sleep because we never really know who's going to be up next. And so we really do want to, train our bodies to have that restorative sleep, so that consistent amount of sleep overnight. I'm sure you have recognized your body changing with sleep deprivation, right? If we aren't sleeping, at least 7, maybe even 8 hours per night, consecutively, our body starts to feel different. We can start to feel, a lot more anxious, a lot more emotional, increased heart rate. And we'll talk about those, impacts of sleep deprivation as well. So not only does it affect your overall well-being, but it impacts your child's as well. It impacts their attention, their behavior, their cognitive abilities, and so much more. And so we really do want to make sleep a priority. After 4 months of age, your child has the capabilities of sleeping 10 to 12 hours overnight. So again, this is uninterrupted. And so we'd love to get them to that point where they are sleeping those long stretches so that the body can do its self-repair while they're sleeping. So as I had mentioned, these are some of the impacts that sleep deprivation can have on your body. Sometimes, we can have memory lapses, right? You're talking and then all of a sudden you forget what you're saying, or you did something and you forgot what you did, a couple of minutes ago. You're yawning all the time. You could have just woken up in the morning and within like minutes, you find yourself yawning, repeatedly and, continues throughout the day. Sometimes you can present signs of ADHD, hyperactivity. It can impact your immune system, which, we all want to be healthy so that we can help to take care of, our families and ourselves. So getting that, proper sleep for ourselves and for our children can help prevent, a lot of these things from happening to our body. So we really want to make sleep a priority. So we often, wonder like, what are those tired signs, right? Some people will say, oh, well, they didn't look tired, or you know what, they seemed okay, so we just kept them awake. Um, you know, Babies aren't always going to be like, hey, it's time for me to take a nap. It's our job to kind of monitor how long they can stay awake for, as well as looking for these sleepy cues that, we can see here on the screen to put those two together to figure out when we should be putting our babies down to sleep. One of the most obvious signs is yawning. This is a very early cue for us to see that our babies are tired. And so they will often, signal, a decrease in them, being alert. So maybe we were engaged in something and now they're kind of, staring off into space. They're disengaging from us, rubbing the eyes, right? While this can be a self-soothing technique, it can also indicate, that our baby is becoming overtired or maybe overstimulated from what, is going on at that time. Quite often babies will get red eyebrows happening. This is because, the blood flow is changing in our body when we are becoming sleepy. And so, it tends to come, out in our face. So, I encourage you to look for these cues and to be mindful of them, as well as, what the clock might be saying, so we can put them together to find that optimal time for sleep. A very common one too is your baby just becomes super fussy. They're irritable, they're no longer happy with, what you were engaging in them with. And so, quite often parents will, contact me and be like, my baby is fussy like all the time. And that's generally because your baby is caught in a cycle of being overtired. And when we are overtired, our body just has a really hard time settling. And so, it presents itself, in different ways for different people. But, when you see these signs, that's our job to kind of take note that, hey, you know what, I think we need to change, something that might be happening here. Our bodies need to build what we refer to as sleep pressure, right? And that's your body's ability to get tired to go to sleep. And so this is why it's really important to, do a few things to get ourselves tired. We really want to make sure that your child's sleep space is dark. Some babies can sleep anywhere at any time, and the light, doesn't seem to impact them. But a majority of babies are impacted by the amount of light that's present when they are trying to sleep. Sometimes it's easy for them to fall asleep in a brighter space, but then we're never going to get a longer stretch of sleep from them because babies sleep in sleep cycles, which we will talk about as well. But when they come out of a cycle and they see brightness, that signals their body that it's time to wake up. But maybe it's actually not time to wake up. Maybe they've only had like a 30-minute nap, and we're looking for naps that are about an hour and a half. So in order to extend, your child's sleep, we want to make sure the sleep space is dark. You can kind of see behind me, I have, some blackout curtains even in my own room. So, it's a good idea to have blackout blinds and then blackout curtains over top. And hang them beyond the frame of the windows so that we don't get those little peaks of light that come around, shining into your sleep space. Garbage bags also do a great trick to keep the room nice and dark. Even hanging a dark sheet, navy blue or black, or a dark gray. We really want to keep it dark because that also signals to our body for the melatonin levels to start increasing. The lightness will decrease that in our bodies. So when we create that dark space, it really helps to inject that sleep pressure into our body, that drive for sleep. We also want to make sure that during the window of time frame that your child is awake, that we are doing things to get them tired. We want to engage in different activities, both, inside the home, outside the home, depending on the weather of where you are, right? But getting outside is an amazing way to build sleep pressure. That fresh air really does an amazing job on your body. But, if it's a rainy day or it's cold, just engage in different activities within your home. Change rooms, change up the toys and that you are playing with. Sometimes I would be playing with my kids and I would be tired of playing with those toys. And then I realized if I probably wasn't as interested, they're probably not either. So I would try and do a toy rotation, at least if you could do it, once a week, once every 2 weeks kind of thing. And it doesn't mean you have to buy new toys all the time, just kind of circulate the ones that you have to keep things interesting. So as I had mentioned, we sleep in sleep cycles. And so, we really start in that light stage of sleep. That is when, we often are starting to disengage from the, environment around us. And this is where, a lot of families will be trying to get their babies to sleep. They will be, rocking, holding, feeding. This is where your baby will fall into this light stage of sleep. And so when we are, rocking, holding, or feeding, at this stage, we're kind of taking away a piece of that sleep cycle once we try to go, and put them down when they're in that deeper stage of sleep. And so in that deep stage of sleep, which is the best, place to be because that is the restorative part that happens. What tends to happen is once we kind of go around in our sleep cycle, we get into REM, our dreaming part. We kind of get back around, to the end of our sleep cycle. And this is where, babies will naturally wake up between sleep cycles. As we go around and come back to the top, they'll naturally wake. If they fell asleep independently the first time, they will wake and reconnect this cycle all on their own. However, if they were rocked or held or fed to sleep, they're going to wake up after this sleep cycle and look for those same associations that got them to sleep the first time. So if you had, let's say, fed to sleep that first time and put them down, and then all of a sudden you're noticing they're up very soon after, well, if we had given, the opportunity for them to try to fall asleep independently from the beginning, there's a much better chance that they'll connect that sleep cycle coming back around and be able to extend that sleep period. So we really want to try and put our babies down alert and awake. I know that as a parent myself, we were always trying to get the baby, in that drowsy state or fully asleep before putting them down. And then we're left wondering, well, why are they up so quick, right? Why it's only been a half an hour, it's been an hour or maybe 2 hours, and then they're up. And if it's happening overnight, they're up every hour or every 2 hours. And we're wondering why we're kind of caught in this cycle. And then we start to think, oh, well, they don't like their sleep sack, or they don't like their crib, or they don't like, whatever it may be, when really that's not the case. It just happens to be that our babies haven't been given the opportunity to try to fall asleep on their own. So their bodies don't know what to do otherwise, right? And so they're left looking for whatever got them to sleep the first time. Um, and it's important for us to remember that like babies are, loud, little humans. And so, just because they are, grunting or whining or moving around in their sleep space, it doesn't mean that we have to step in and do something, right? We really want to step in when there's like excessive protesting happening, so that we can, reassure them that we are, there for them. But if they're just kind of, maybe letting a little cry out for a minute or so or two, they're whining, they're gurgling, they're grumbling, whatever it may be, I encourage you to take a step back and wait to see what they're going to do. Because if you are constantly, stepping in, as soon as we hear them making any kind of noise or movement, you can be disrupting their, self-soothing and self-settling, process, and then fully waking them up, right? And then stimulating them and then getting them back to sleep. Excuse me, can be quite a challenge, right? So we really want to take a step back. And I know this can be hard, right? Like, obviously, nobody wants to hear their baby cry or anything. So I'm not asking you to just let them cry. I'm asking you to take a step back, listen, watch. I mean, we have so many amazing monitors these days. Watch what they're doing. Listen, are they, trying to settle themselves? If they're protesting, starting and stopping, starting and stopping, like, this is a good sign. That means they're trying to self-soothe themselves, to settle themselves. And if we step in at this point, it's going to break that process. So I encourage you to take a step back, watch, listen, and then, offer your support on an as needed basis. We're often wondering, like, how much sleep does our little one need? And obviously that depends on how old they are, right? So when we are in the newborn stage, that 0 to 3 months, that's when we're getting the most amount of sleep, right? In total, we're getting 16 to 18 hours in a 24-hour period. And they can be sleeping, up to 6 naps in a day, right? And so at this stage, naps can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, right? Depending on, your child. Usually we drop down to about 4 or 5 naps once we get to about, 3 months of age. Once our babies get, to that 3, 4 month part, this is where sleep cycles really start to solidify, and we start to see changes in our baby's sleep. Sometimes changes for the better and sometimes changes for the worse. And so this will depend, on your child. And this is where we often hear about that 4 month sleep regression. Maybe your baby was sleeping well, and all of a sudden they're 4 months old and things are not going the way they used to. Getting them to sleep is much harder. They're sleeping much less than they were before. And that's because their body is adjusting and really starting to, self-regulate. And so they don't always want us to do the things that we were doing before. They're looking for a little bit more space. And so I encourage you to, try and offer them that, even if it's not all day long, but, choose a nap of the day where you're going to try and offer some more space to them and see what happens. As we get into that 3 to 6 month, age frame, we're generally down to about 3 naps. An amazing nap is an hour and a half long. Does this happen all the time? Absolutely not. But can we work to get to that point? For sure. Ideal naps are from an hour to an hour and a half long. But typically, the families that will, come to us and, have sleep challenges is their baby's only sleeping 30 to 40 minutes, right? And that is one sleep cycle. And so we really want to be mindful of, okay, why is our baby only sleeping one sleep cycle? Generally, that's because some kind of external factors have got them to sleep the first time and they can't, connect those cycles. So we do want to teach them how to connect those cycles so that they can get that 10 to 12 hours of consecutive sleep overnight. And same from, 6 to 12 months. We're generally down to about 2 naps per day at this point, looking for about 3 hours of daytime sleep. Sometimes it's 2 hours and 1 hour. Sometimes it's an hour and a half and an hour and a half. But generally we're looking for about 3 hours of daytime sleep at that point. Once your baby hits, that 12 months and beyond kind of thing, we're still looking for that 10 to 12 hours of consecutive sleep overnight. Most babies, we encourage them to stay on a 2 nap schedule until they're about 15, 16 months old, unless you are going, in a childcare facility that only does that 1 nap. And so, if there is only 1 nap happening and, we're, putting them in the childcare center at, 12 months, then, we would have to work to shift their sleep schedule to accommodate that 1 nap, per day. And this is just, a quick snapshot of, the different age ranges. You can even take a screenshot of it as well. And how much time, should our child be awake? These times are not, set in stone, but they are, kind of tried, tested, and true to kind of have this time frame that really is developmentally appropriate for most babies, right? So, if your baby is, 7 months old, let's say, they're typically going to be awake from 3 to maybe 4 hours at a time, right? And so, the higher number that you see here would be the max time frame for that age group. Sometimes we wonder, well, how do I know if it's the minimum time or the maximum time? And so it really, we want to stay, let's say your baby is 7 months, we want to stay on the lower end at the beginning part of the day. Maybe we start off our day, they wake up at 7 o'clock. If we have a 3 hour wake window, by 10 o'clock, they're going to be down for their first nap, hoping it's about an hour and a half. So maybe we're up by 11:30. And then, maybe we're going to add on another 3 hours. So, that would take us to 2:30, even 2.5 hours at 3 o'clock. Get that other nap in there. And then bedtime will be dictated, based on obviously how well or how poorly, your naps went during the day. So if you had a series of short naps during the day, well, that's going to mean your bedtime's going to have to move a little bit earlier that night. We can put our babies down as early as 6 p.m., right? Some people are very alarmed by that and they're like, oh my gosh, I am not putting my baby down at 6 p.m. If they are, under the age of 1, we can put them down as early as 6 p.m. And, I want to remind you that sleep gets sleep. It is not beneficial to keep our babies up later in hopes that they're going to sleep in. It just doesn't happen. When we overextend our babies, this is where they become overtired. And although they might fall asleep at bedtime, we might start to see night wakings happen or early morning rising happen because their body just can't settle for a long enough, period of time. And so, where it does say, for like the 7-month mark here, up to, 4 hours, 4 hours would be the longest we would ever keep them awake. So let's say they woke up from their last nap at, 4 o'clock. The maximum time I could put them to bed would be 8 p.m. And so we really wouldn't want to extend beyond that time frame to, put ourselves at risk of being overtired. So, these are good, general guidelines of, things that you can do to follow throughout your day. And really, you know what, this is what you would want to use to guide the way your day is going. Your baby might not always take a nap at 10 o'clock on the dot every single day. And that's okay, right? Maybe they woke up at 6:30 that morning, so we've got to put them down for their morning nap a little bit earlier. Maybe that second nap didn't go as long as planned, and so we've got to, move bedtime a little earlier. So we have to be flexible, as well. So, take a shot of this, keep it so that, you can use it as a guideline for you in terms of guiding your day. I had mentioned before, the words sleep associations. Okay. And sleep associations are, conditions or objects that we have within our day that our child associates with falling asleep. So, they learn to become dependent on these associations for sleep. So, examples can be objects such as a sleep sack or white noise or specific routines in our day, or they could be, actions that we might be doing, the rocking, the feeding, the pacifier. These are all sleep associations that our children learn that they need for sleep. And so, if we are, feeding to sleep, every, sleep period, then our baby has learned that that is the way that they are supposed to get to sleep. And so, quite often parents will say, well, if I don't feed them to sleep, then they, protest, continuously. Well, initially that is going to happen. If you start to remove things that they are used to doing, you are going to get a little bit of resistance from them because they are now feeling a little bit frustrated that you're not doing the things that you've continuously done for them before. Right? Now they're also going to be learning a new skill now that we're removing, let's say, feeding to sleep. Learning a new skill takes time and patience and practice. So that can be frustrating on their part too, which results in protest, right? They don't have the verbal communication skills that adults do, or even older children do, to let you know that, hey, like, listen, you used to, feed me to sleep and now you're not. And I don't really love that. And they're also overtired. So overtired, feeling frustrated, practicing new skills, you're going to get some protest happening. Nobody wants to hear their child upset or protesting, but it's really important for us to understand why the protest is happening, right? It's not that they're in danger or, being hurt or anything like that. They're just expressing themselves. So it's important to be mindful of that piece as well. So, ask yourself, how is my child falling asleep? Am I doing all the work for them? And, if I am, and this is working for you, so be it. I'm not here to tell you that you have to change the way you're doing things in your home. But if you are looking to make changes to the way sleep happens, then, we do have to put in a little bit of work so that we can start to see those changes happen. Right. And sometimes, that maybe that co-sleeping or the pacifier or rocking to sleep was working for your family, but maybe now it's no longer working. And so this is where we do want to make changes to sleep because those things were maybe no longer sustainable. Maybe you're returning to work and, you really have to be alert and awake at your job. Otherwise, you can't function there. Right. And so if you're sleep deprived, then it's going to be really hard for you to function, in your work environment and then come home from work and be the best version of the parent that you want to be, right? So we have to think about sustainability as well. So these are some of the most common, sleep challenges that I am presented with when parents contact me. The baby's always crying. They're always fussy. They just never seem like we can settle them. And that's generally because they're overtired. A lot of families will contact me, and say that their baby has colic. And I will tell you, probably 98% of the time, their baby was actually just overtired. And once we got them sleeping well, they never mentioned the word colic ever again. So, we want to be mindful of why is our baby crying all the time? There has to be a reason, right? So we have to dig deeper to figure out what that might be. Maybe your baby's having multiple night wakings, right? Waking up every hour or two. Beyond the newborn stage, we can get them sleeping those longer stretches of time. In the newborn stage, it's very common to have multiple night wakings because they need to be fed, right? But beyond, 4 months, as long as there's no weight concerns from your pediatrician, then you can absolutely look at, only maybe keeping one night feed in and removing the other ones. And then by 6 months of age, we generally try to remove, all of the night feedings. Some families are ready to get rid of the night feedings right off the bat. And that's good, a good way to go for them. And, that's works for some people. So, you got to try and, think about what works for your family as well. Maybe you're, rocking the baby to sleep and then you go to put them down and they're waking up every single time, right? Well, that's where we talked about, however they fall asleep the first time is going to be the way they need to fall asleep each and every time they come out of a sleep cycle. So, we want to try and promote, a little bit more of independent sleep skills, putting them down alert and awake, taking a step back and waiting to see what happens before we, step in and offer some support. And quite often we get asked, well, how long do I wait before I offer this support? Also depends on how old your baby is and what your comfort level is. Those are two things that play a role as well. But we generally encourage anywhere from, 5 minutes to 10 minutes of taking that step back and waiting to offer support. And when we are taking a step back, we want to make sure that we're not in eyesight of our child. Because if we are, it kind of is, confusing to them as why you're standing there staring at them when you're not doing anything for them. So this is why the room needs to be, completely dark so they can't see you, or you need to move yourself into a position where they can't see you, or remove yourself from the room so that they can't see you. Some families are only comfortable starting off with waiting 5 minutes before they enter to offer support. But we're looking for continuous protest to step in and offer support. If your baby's just kind of whining and, moaning and moving around, and all that kind of stuff, that's not really a need for us to step in. But if they are, heavily protesting for 5 solid minutes, well, then we want to step in, offer some support, patting their head, rubbing their chest, shushing them. If they're sleeping on their tummy, maybe patting their bum or their back. We do want to keep those, supports brief at the same time. We're not in there to put them back to sleep. We're really in there to reassure them that we are here. We haven't left, right? And so we want to provide that reassurance and then take a step back again. Common one as well, those 30-minute naps, sometimes less. Sometimes babies will have a 10-minute nap. And that's generally because, we've done, some of that work for them at the beginning and maybe held on to them before we tried to put them down. And so they've already taken away a piece of their sleep cycle at that point. So we want to, alert and awake, is key. If you have a toddler, maybe they are in a bed, and they're coming out of their bed each night, coming to your bed, wanting to sleep with you or wanting you to sleep with them. Very common, thing to happen at this age. Maybe they're, constantly asking for things, wanting snacks, wanting water, needing to use the washroom. We'll kind of touch base on, a few of those things afterwards. But the question you want to ask yourself is, how is my baby falling asleep? Your sleep environment is key to, having good sleep skills in place as well. So, we want to make sure our baby has their own sleep space. This is for safety as well. And so, you can have, a crib or a pack and play in your room. It doesn't mean they have to have their own room, but we just encourage them to have their own sleep space. So, a crib, a bassinet, pack and play, whatever, works for you and your sleep environment. We always want to put our babies down on their back, no matter how old they are. If they turn on their own, that's totally fine. But, back is what we always encourage families to place their baby for safety reasons. We want to keep the room really dark, which is what we spoke about. We want to make sure, temperature wise, I know some of you are from the States and I'm, Canadian, and I wrote in Celsius here. I'm not good at translating that, so I apologize. But, in Celsius terms, 20 to 23 degrees. We don't want it too hot, too cold. If your room is on the cooler side, get a sleep sack, for your child. We use sleep sacks as long as we're in a crib. So, once you transition to a bed, at that point, you wouldn't need to continue using a sleep sack because you can have blankets in that. Under the age of 1, we don't have anything else in the crib besides the baby and a sleep sack. So no stuffies, no pillows, um, no bumpers, all of those things, we keep removed from the sleep space. So as you can see, in the picture here, it's, super plain, with the exception of, that little blanket there that would be removed, when the baby went in, unless they are over the age of 1. That's when you can start to introduce, those toddler pillows. So those smaller pillows, you can even introduce a blanket, a lovey, those types of things. But the crib should be free of toys or anything like that. I really encourage families to use sound machines. Those are, tools that we would keep on only when the baby is sleeping or toddler. My daughter's 4, we're still using a sound machine. We have a very active household. I have 3 children, and not everybody goes to bed at the same time. And so, quite often when our babies are sleeping, we're like walking on eggshells through the house, like, oh my goodness, I can't clean. I can't, do the dishes because I don't want to make noise. Or we're like shushing our other children because, the baby's sleeping. If you have a sound machine on, that will make your life so much easier. Use it either on white noise or rain. Turn it on as you're exiting, the nursery or your room, whatever it is, and keep it on for the entire sleep period. Don't set it on a timer or anything like that, because if it's on a timer and your baby wakes up out of a sleep cycle and now there's like a crash in the kitchen of, dishes or something like that, it's going to wake your baby up. So we want to make sure it's on continuously while the baby is sleeping. Do not turn it on while you are feeding, before sleep, because it can put us into a drowsy state. And we don't want to be drowsy going down. We always want to be, alert and awake. So save the sound machine, to turn on as you're exiting the sleep space. And then when the sleep, period has ended and you come into the room, you can turn that off, open your curtains, and continue on, with your day. So a little bit of a nap routine. It's key to have some kind of routine in place for both nap times and bedtimes so that your child becomes familiar with, oh, okay, they're doing this, so that means, nap time is coming, or they're doing this, so this means bedtime is coming. So, we always want to do a diaper change before a sleep period, put on that sleep sack. You can choose to either sing a song or read a book before nap time. In my house, I was always like just jumping from diaper change and sleep sack to alert and awake in the crib. I always had so many things I wanted to get done during that nap time that I was like just ready to get going. So, if you choose to do a song or a book, that's perfect. Just stay continuous with whichever, option you choose to take. If you are singing a song, I encourage you to sing upbeat songs as opposed to like lullaby songs, which can put your baby into that drowsy state. So sing songs that maybe even have actions, a head, shoulders, knees, and toes, a twinkle, twinkle, little star, where we can like move our hands around, and you can use your body to, move theirs around, a wheels on the bus kind of thing. The wheels are going, the wipers are going, the horn is going, keep it active. So you'll notice here that there is no feed happening before the nap time. Okay, we really want to work on a wake, eat, play, sleep routine. Okay, and so that helps us prevent from feeding to sleep, right? And so feeding to sleep, just means that our child, when they wake up out of sleep cycle, is going to protest looking for that feed that got them to sleep the first time. So, when your child wakes up from their sleep period, that's when we're going to offer the feed to them. So you will have a diaper change, either sing a song or read a book, and into the crib, alert and awake, on their back, sound machine on, lights off, and you're going to, exit the room. This is where you're going to watch and listen as to what's happening, right? If your baby is not doing much, no need to go back in. If we, instantly hear that protest and then it stops and then it starts again, well, we're going to wait, right? If we were waiting 10 minutes, let's call it, then we're going to reset our timer. Every time they stop crying, we're going to reset our timer. So, maybe they cried for 3 minutes and stopped for one. Well, let's reset our timer because now we're going to look for that 10 minutes of solid protest before I'm going to go in and offer that support. And remember that brief support, right? So a minute or less kind of thing. We don't want to overstimulate them. We don't want to give them that false hope that we're going to pick them up and end the sleep period. We want them to go to sleep. So we have to encourage that by offering that brief support, that shushing, that, it's nap time, mama loves you, dada loves you, whatever it may be, and, take a step back. Additionally, we want to have a bedtime routine, right? I encourage families to have a bath every night if possible. Some children have, eczema or skin irritations where having a bath every night is just not feasible. Totally understandable. But having a bath, where possible is beneficial because it does change the temperature of our body. It does relax us, and it does, kind of set the stage that when we have a bath, they know that a long stretch of sleep is coming their way. So I would always start with a bath. You can do some kind of like lotion massage, diapers, PJs, sleep sack. Bedtime is the only time we offer a feed close to a sleep period, right? So we want to, have that last feed, but we don't want it to be the last thing that we're doing. We don't want to go from feed to crib. Okay, we want to insert, another action to happen so that baby is alert and awake when going down. Right. So like now let's read a book. If you're noticing they're falling asleep while you're feeding, if you're breastfeeding, like switch sides, maybe you have to open the top of their pajamas to kind of, get them alert and awake. Maybe, you need to blow in their face. You want to do all of the things to keep them awake. Feeding with the lights on is also key, right? Keep it bright. Even if you don't have an overhead light on, but keep the lamp on so that it is bright and, there's still, can be alert and awake. And then once, you're finished doing that, that's when we're going to put them, into the crib, alert and awake, onto their back, sound machine on, lights out, and, we can exit the room. There are other sleep strategies, that we can talk about as well. In terms of, how we can get our babies to sleep with maybe offering more support than doing kind of the leave and check strategy, which I had mentioned before. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. We want to make sure that our children are going down at an age appropriate time. Sometimes, families will, keep their babies up for too long and then have a really big challenge when it comes to bedtime. And that can be for babies and toddlers alike, right? If we overextend our toddlers as well, bedtime is going to be a little bit of a nightmare. It's going to be a battle. They're overtired. They can't settle themselves. You're going to get resistance. There's going to be protest happening. And so it's really key to, as often as possible to get them to bed at the age appropriate time, right? Bedtime, for this age group of children we're talking about is between 6 and 7:30 and no later than that. I know it's summertime and, sometimes we want to extend, ourselves. You can absolutely go out and enjoy, and do all of the things. I just encourage you not to do that night after night after night if you don't want to have a miserable, child on your hands. You know what? You want to go to that, barbecue, out on a Friday night and, stay out a little later, go for it. The next day is a new day and we can get sleep back on track the next day. So, having healthy sleep habits doesn't mean we have to be in bed every single night at the same time or, we're going to break the system. It's not like that, right? We want to remember like that 80-20 rule, right? We want to be consistent 80% of the time, and then we have some room for flexibility. So, just keep that in mind when, we are talking about sleep. We want to get them to have that 10 to 12 hours overnight. Generally, babies will sleep between 11 and 12 hours consecutively if they've got those independent sleep skills happening. So be mindful, that those things can happen for you. Um, you know, your bedtime, as I mentioned earlier, too, can shift depending on how your day went, right? Maybe your baby typically, goes to bed at 7:30, but you had some short naps that day. We had a nap on the go, which is always going to be shorter than a crib nap. So maybe we had to move bedtime to 7 o'clock tonight. Well, that's okay. And then there are some families that, baby does have to go to bed early, but maybe the other parent doesn't come home from work in time, and they don't, get to spend, that quality time, with their child when they come home from work. We do have to remember that we want to put our babies, needs first. It is sad when, my husband comes home from work and doesn't get to see, the kids sometimes because he comes home late. But thank goodness we have FaceTime and all of the things these days where, we can still connect with each other. And remember, like, this is only a temporary time in their life where they might have to go to bed a little bit earlier. It's not forever. Right. So, keep that in mind and keep, babies' priorities first. And then, then we can put ours, second, so that we're not overextending them to kind of meet our expectations. We want to make sure we practice skills while our children are awake. If your child is learning a new skill, maybe it's rolling, crawling, walking, language, development, any of those types of things, we want to make sure we practice those during their awake times. If we don't, you're going to find your children are practicing them when they're trying to go to sleep. And that will, keep them awake, right? Just like you, when you go and, crawl into bed at night, you've got like that laundry list of things kind of running through your head. The same thing happens to them, right? They're like, oh, I'm practicing this new skill. I need to practice it now. I need to get really good at it. And then they're, rolling back and forth, all over their crib and not going to sleep, right? So the more practice you can get, during their awake time, the better. And, not only to practice skills that we're learning, like that, milestone achievements and things like that, but practice the skill of independent sleep. Okay, practice, choose a nap, the first nap of the day, let's say, and, use that time to practice independent sleep. So we're going to try and not, assist them to sleep for that nap period. We're going to try and put them down alert and awake, waiting and seeing what happens, right? So, give them the opportunities, and I promise you will start to see changes happen if you give them the opportunity to do so. We want to practice that independent sleep by putting them down, as I mentioned, alert and awake. We want to, pull back on the assistance that we're providing, right? So shifting our feeds to a different time, of day. So we're not feeding to sleep. We want to, cut back on the rocking, them to sleep or bouncing, whatever it may be, so that they can try and fall asleep on their own. And then we want to work on that wake, eat, play, routine so that we can promote, feeding away from sleep periods. And then, just to touch on toddler sleep, toddlers are a lot of fun and like a lot of work at the same time. And, they are natural born boundary pushers, right? They're not doing it to be malicious or anything like that. But they are at that stage of life where they are, trying all of the things to get what they, want. Very much a cause and effect. If I do this, what do you do? Right? So it's really important to have clear communication and expectations with your toddler, right? They don't know how to behave or how to interact if we don't teach them how to do that, right? So that means maybe you have to model for them what you want sleep to look like. You want to talk to them about it. You want to, offer them rewards for doing good things. Create a sticker reward chart and, put some things on it like, I put away my toys or I put my pajamas on or I took a bath. I laid quietly in my bed, and, give them a sticker for the things that they did. And if they fill, that whole column, you can either offer them a reward, day to day. You can offer them a reward, after 3, rows of stickers, whatever it may be. Offer them incentive. Toddlers love a good reward, right? And make sure it's something that they're really interested in, right? Like if you know that your child loves dinosaurs, like go to the dollar store and get some dinosaurs, and if you stay in your bed quietly all night, then like in the morning you're going to get the dinosaur or the Play-Doh or the Smarties. Whatever it may be, offer them incentive. I'm telling you, it is you're going to work in your favor if you stay consistent with it. Separation anxiety is very normal for toddlers as well, right? They want to be with you, especially if your child's been in daycare all day and then you pick them up and then we are, now rushing to make dinner and do the dishes and all of the things before it's a bedtime routine. We're kind of missing that connection with our child. And when we're missing that connection with our child, that's when we start to see the behaviors change. We start to see, asking for snacks, asking for water, one more story, or, please lay with me. They want that, what we refer to as golden time, that one-on-one time with you. It doesn't have to be a long time. It just has to be meaningful to them. Right. So if they love playing, or love coloring or playing with Play-Doh, like set aside 10 minutes when you come home, after you've eaten dinner, if we're rushing at that time of day, to sit down and play with them. Like leave the dishes for once, the kids have gone to bed. I know I like to get all the dishes done and have a clean kitchen before I move on, but like, is it necessary? No. You'll see a change in your child's behavior if you fill their bucket throughout the day, right? If you do things that are meaningful to them and so they have that connection with you. So that's really key as well. If your kid is getting out of bed and coming to your room continuously, you have to walk them back every single time. Okay, if you walk them back 20 times and on the 21st time you're like, forget it, come and sleep in my bed, you're starting from ground zero, the very next day. It's like it never happened, right? So if you're going to follow through, you have to follow through till the end. Otherwise, they've kind of called your bluff, right? They're like, no, whatever, I can do this 30 times and I know that they're going to, come and lay with me after or bring me into their bed. So it's exhausting initially, but I promise you the consistency of walking them back, keeping it boring. Don't do any like piggybacks or picking them up or anything like that, because that's fun for them, right? Just kind of gently guide them back. It's bedtime, tuck them in. And repeating that process, it's exhausting, but I promise you, after a couple of days of continuously doing that, you will see changes happen. Consistency is the key to making the magic happen. So, make sure you are staying consistent. It takes about 5 to 7 days of consistency to really see changes fall into place. So, be mindful of that when you're like trying it the second day, you're like, oh, this isn't working. Really that's where we've kind of fallen off the bandwagon is we haven't given it enough time. So give it time and you will see, the changes happen. Just quickly on screen time, all of our children, and us as adults, we spend a lot of time, more adults, I would say, on screens, which is totally fine. It's part of our daily life. The only thing I want to mention is when we are on screens before sleep periods, it does impact, how we can fall asleep, right? The light from the devices lowers our melatonin levels. It doesn't give us that opportunity to wind down, right? So I encourage you to, you can absolutely have screen time whenever you'd like, but before a sleep period, about 60 minutes is when I would cut it off. So if bedtime is 7:30, by 6:30, there's no more screen time. So no more TV, no more iPad, no more watching, videos on the phone. And try not to, lie in bed, with your toddler and watch videos and stuff like that to fall asleep at night. It's not going to, be helpful for the type of sleep they're going to be getting. So, have your screen time throughout the day in that, but just, keep it away from sleep periods. And just quickly before we wrap up, there are different sleep training, methods, and these are just a couple of them. So the most common one that I work with families is called sitting in the room, and it is exactly that. It allows you to stay in the room while your child falls asleep and offer, support on an as needed kind of basis. It allows just one parent to stay in the room, and it really works on a gradual release of responsibility. So, that is the most common strategy, when put into place, super effective. Leave and check is another strategy we use, which I talked a lot about, is, putting our babies down, leaving the room and checking in on an as needed basis. Okay, and then, some families are very comfortable doing this last method, and most families are not, which is, the cried out method, which I would say is the most intense approach. It's not something that I practice within, my company, but it is, where we would just be putting our baby, in their crib, closing the door, and just letting them cry until they fall asleep. So, I mean, I would suggest, the top two options if you're, looking to get some changes to sleep. And I mean, let's be real. If, well-rested parents means that you're happier, you're more present, you're more loving, you're more patient, you get to be a little bit more focused on your family. And so we really want, you to feel well-rested so you can be the best version of you. So yes, I see there are a lot of questions, coming through here. So I'm happy to answer kind of as many as we can get. And here's my contact info in case, you'd like to send me an email or follow me on Instagram, and ask me, any questions. Maybe today we didn't get to your question and you want to email it to me. You can absolutely do that as well.
Thank you, ma'am. That was so great. A lot of the questions that came in, you pretty much answered as you went through.
Okay.
So thank you for that. But just some questions while we have a little bit of time left. First of all, I didn't do any of these with my two children, and I'm like taking so many notes, like why, it sounds so easy. It's just, so yeah, you really opened my eyes. So thank you for that.
Oh, no problem.
Um, so I thought this question was interesting. It just says, is there a concern with white noise being too loud or causing hearing damage?
Yeah, so we do definitely want to be mindful of how loud our sound machine is. And so what I usually do is I download an app on my phone. It's a decibel reader.
Mm.
And so what you would want to do is you would want to, first, we don't want to place the sound machine like right beside our child's head. We really do want to place it close to the door. Because that's where the noise would be coming from, right? Sometimes your crib is close to the door and that's, fine kind of thing. But then maybe you're not going to have your sound machine as loud. So try and, place it near the door. We're going to turn your sound machine on to a level that you think, sounds loud enough. You're going to download the decibel reader and you're going to then move yourself to wherever the crib is and hold your phone there. And we generally want it to be between around 60 decibels on the meter. And so if it's beyond that, then you'd want to kind of lower your sound machine. And if it's lower than that, then we would want to kind of raise the volume a little bit. So it would only be concerning if it was too loud. And sometimes what we do in our house is, if we're having like a party or something like that and my toddler's going to bed, we will turn the sound machine a little bit louder. And then when they leave, we'll lower it. And it's just to kind of block out the noise so that the baby can sleep and we can sleep. We're not keeping it on like a higher volume all night long or anything like that. And then sometimes we've, even placed the sound machine like right outside the door. Maybe if your, room doesn't allow for a sound machine beside the crib because of the way things are kind of thing, you can put a sound machine right outside the door. And you can do that same procedure with a decibel reader to make sure it's not too loud.
Okay, great. Yeah, I never would have thought about that. So thank you for everybody asked that question. Um, Another question, what age is it appropriate to start the not feeding to sleep? For example, does it apply to newborns 4 weeks old who are sleeping most of the day and waking to feed?
Yeah, newborns, no, anything is fair game with a newborn. And you can never like spoil a newborn anyway, right? So, do all of the feeding, the contact sleeping, the, whatever during that newborn stage. No, we really work on that wake, eat, play schedule once they're about 4 months old. That's when we can, start to just shift the way, your feeds are happening, in your day. You're still going to get the same amount of feeds happening. Sometimes we have to get two feeds happening in a wake window period. And that's okay too. But just be mindful that we want to keep it away from the sleep period. So, let's say you're, have a 2 hour wake window. We fed, as soon as they wake up. And now, we want to get another feed in. They didn't maybe feed as well, or we're going to run out of time afterwards. So you want to offer the feed, but we want to keep it about 15 to 20 minutes away from that sleep period. So, if we got to put them down by 2 hours, like by an hour and 40 minutes, we're going to, try and top up, a feed at that point. And then again, just like at bedtime, we don't want the feed to be the last thing that we're doing, right?
Mhm.
Engage in some type of other activity after the feed so that, baby is alert and awake. So, take a walk around the house, read a book, sing a song, do an activity, all of that is dependent on how old your child is. But if they're on the younger side, we just want to try and keep them awake. But you can absolutely get, two feedings in a wake window. Just keep it about 15, 20 minutes away from that sleep period.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question, last one. How many nights, months, years of good sleep does it take to migrate or reverse the effects of sleep deprivations, mostly for parents?
For parents,
Yeah,
I mean, it depends how long you've been sleep deprived. Honest, and I mean, this is different for every household, but I mean, the sooner you get, sleep on track and the sooner you yourself get to start sleeping well. I mean, I work with the families that I work with, we work together for a 2 week period. And I have parents, even after the first week being like, I feel like an entirely new human being, right? So, some people it kicks
yeah,
in like right away, and because they just have been had like awful sleep this entire time. And so for them, even getting like 6 to 7 hours consecutively is like a game changer.
huge. Yeah.
So sometimes it can take a week and sometimes it can take a little bit longer than that. So again, it's really like dependent on the person, how you're sleeping, what your sleep environment looks like. Like, just like we want to pay attention to our children's sleep environment, we want to do the same for ours too. Like I mentioned, this is, there's my nice Peloton there. Sorry. You want to make sure you have blackout curtains in your room too. Keep that space dark and cool and relaxing, so that you can get that sleep once your child is, sleeping well.
Okay, great. Well, that about takes it our time for today, but thank you so much for all the amazing information and for joining us today. We'd like to remind all participants that there will be a recording sent out following today's session, as well as the survey that will be popping up when the talk ends. So we'd really appreciate it. Just take a minute, give us some feedback. Like Alana said, you can reach out. I know we had a lot of great questions today, some that were answered just from the presentation alone, but feel free to reach out if needed. So thank you so much, Alana. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you next month, August 21st, for our next Kidco Talk. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.